When I was in federal prison or just after I surrendered, I was frustrated at how much of the information I received was wrong. And I had no doubt some of what I read, people thought they were giving me the appropriate information, but in retrospect, it was all wrong. And I've seen so much of that with the Elizabeth Holmes case. I have no doubt people have good intentions. Maybe they want views. I don't know what it is, but I know people have good intentions, though they continue to give bad information about what her life in federal prison will be like regarding visiting with her family, how frequently she will call home, how long she will actually serve. So, for that reason, and because I've served time in prison and everyone on our team has, I want to film this video that kind of addresses 25 of the most frequently received questions our team has received since we've been covering the Elizabeth Holmes case. And some of them are as you would expect, but I'm going to respond from the perspective of a former federal prisoner. It's not conjecture, it's not hyperbole, it's not made up. It's sobering in some cases, in some instances, it's hopeful. In some cases, it's very frustrating and it angers people about what her life on the inside will be like. I'm going to go through the questions. It will not be totally exhaustive because I would be here for days. And I've covered that in previous videos about first day in federal prison, life in federal prison, jobs in federal prison that I'll eventually put in this YouTube description. But I am going to cover some of it here with hopes that you have a real understanding of what she's facing in the weeks, months, and years ahead, because eventually we're going to forget about Elizabeth Holmes, just like we forgot about all of the people in the Varsity Blues case, or forget about Elizabeth Holmes. Sam Bankman-Fried's going to be on the grid here soon. And then the next high-profile person is going to be on the grid. They're going to be up next on their way to federal prison. The good news is, even though Elizabeth Holmes probably isn't watching this video, anyone traversing this wretched system can. And I hope they take the advice that I offer, because if you do, it will make your experience a little easier and more bearable. The first question, and generally any question of the 25 that I'm going to go through, we've had 10 or 15 of these types of comments. So I'm going to address it. Number one, hey man, what in the F is wrong with you? What in the heck and effing are you doing helping her? What type of decent human being would be given advice to this monster, sociopath, psycho who's going to federal prison? A major red flag about you as a person offering advice that would help Elizabeth Holmes. So I've received that messages via TikTok or YouTube dozens of times. Why would I offer to help her? Maybe she's watching the video and she will take the advice. And my response would be, I hope she takes the advice. She's going to prison for 11 years. She has 2 young children. There are people standing alongside her. I hope she makes the most of the experience. But to the point of why I would help what someone calls a monster, which I don't agree with, even if that leads to disliking of this video. She's not a monster. Why my team works with white-collar defendants traversing the criminal justice system, and many people like yours truly didn't get it until they went to federal prison. I was called a monster. I was called a terrible person. People took pleasure in my pain and the fact that I was going to federal prison. I didn't get it till I crossed over into federal prison. I stood for count. I was away from my family, and then it was like a slap to the face. My God, I'm in prison. I have got to get it together. I still maintain hope that that is possible for her once she gets to federal prison. So why do I do it? I believe that we can change, and I believe that we can become better. And I'm grateful to help with people who have grateful to help people, to work with my team and help people who have made bad choices, accept responsibility, and emerge better. And I still believe at some point in her federal prison term, she's going to accept responsibility and emerge stronger than when she went in. Second question, what are the final days like before federal prison? It's sobering. And of course, the answer to that question kind of depends on the length of the sentence. I went in for 18 months, so I knew it was going to end pretty quickly. When you're enduring 11 years and many Christmases and holidays away from home, it's very difficult to accept that future. And it's very difficult to embrace all of the terrible decisions that led to this very lengthy journey. So I presume if she's following any of the takeaways or advice she's following in that New York Times article, she's with her family, she's reflecting. I hope she's grateful for the blessings that remain in her life, but it doesn't change that it is a massive journey that awaits her. It's coming. So it's just very difficult to plan your finances of living on a few $100s a month, getting your medical needs in order. I presume she's spending dozens of hours getting her legal paperwork in order because she's going to spend a lot of time managing her case while on the inside. But the final days between sentencing and surrender are the hardest because there's no evading the reality. You're going to federal prison. And many people want to be around family. Some people, like me, kind of want to be alone and just reflect on the horror in the state of our life, can be disastrous. Number 3, what is the first day like, and will she be strip searched and forced to squat and cough like you described in your book, Lessons from Prison? Bryan Federal Prison Camp, where she's going to federal prison, is slightly different. What I mean is a lot of federal prisons you can park, you can walk in with your family, say, hello, I'm here to self-surrender. Here's my name. Here's my BOP number that she would have gotten at bop.gov. And they will add, do you have any medications, anything that you have brought with you? In this case, at Bryan, they actually come out to the parking lot to get you. So the family stays behind in the car. They go bye-bye. They then walk you in and you go through this process on your own. She will have brought any medications, her legal paperwork. You're not allowed to bring any money in. That will be wired by way of Western Union, or she can send a money order to the P.O. box in Iowa. To the idea of strip searching, yeah, that is a big affirmative, right? These prisoners, it's a big deal for us. It's our first day. For staff, it's like nothing. They've been through it hundreds of times. They're desensitized to it. They probably won't care that a celebrity is coming in. Many of them won't even know who the hell Elizabeth Holmes. They don't care. But for Elizabeth, it's a big deal. She may end up sitting in a holding cell for several hours as staff walks around. I would encourage her on that first day to get there at 10 o'clock in the morning, not at 12 or 1 p.m., which is when they can encourage you to surrender. It's good to get there on time so you can get to the camp in the afternoon, get acclimated to the camp. If you get there too late, you can stay in the hole overnight, or segregation if there's a change in staff. So absolutely, she will be strip searched. And I recall in my instance, it wasn't that big a deal, but at the time it felt humiliating to strip and get naked and squat and cough and bend over repeatedly, to then get transferred into a prisoner's uniform to go through an interview with a doctor or a doctor's assistant where they're asking you about your state of mind. Are you depressed? Are you suicidal? It is a whole lot to take in, and her first day will be overwhelming. Indeed, she'll feel better that next day as she works her way into the compound. To that first day, I expect her to hit the compound around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She may hit the chow hall that first time for dinner around 4 or 5 o'clock, and everyone that first day will know that she's the new prisoner because of the way that she's dressed, because of the way that she'll be walking. As prepared as she hopes to be, she's going to be lost. Some prisoner or guard is going to have to direct her to the dorm, to laundry, to get items, to camp control. Someone's going to have to do it. So she's going to look somewhat lost, confused, and dazed. And I have no doubt on that first day, there will be people who will come up and offer to help her and offer her some items. And many of them may not know her, but it's their job, or they feel like it's their job to welcome new prisoners, and they will offer that to her. There are some people, and I saw someone on a YouTube video. He's never been to prison. I think he's a lawyer. Said, never take anything from anything in federal prison. Then you are indebted and they're going to extort you. No, she's going to a minimum security camp. There are going to be people there who offer her some things without expecting anything in return. That's why part of the title of this video is the truth about what she can expect in federal prison. Of course, new prisoners are offered things, and it's oftentimes not expected to be repaid. Now, in time, she should be cautious about what she takes and the friendships that she forms, but it is very common that first day in federal prison for someone to give you some granola, some shower shoes, some soap, something, because it could be days before she actually shops in the laundry. So that strip search will be tough. She'll get used to it because when you go to visit, you strip search as well. So it's something she will do dozens, if not hundreds of times throughout her journey in federal prison. 4, how will her prison experience differ from an average prisoner? When you go to prison and no one knows you, it's very easy to lay low. You just work your way into your routine. But there are people in prison who get bored and who are expecting new people to come in. So it will be very difficult for Elizabeth Holmes to lay low as a federal prisoner because so many people will know her. And there are some people in prison who are bored, who don't care if they get into trouble or go to the hole or get transferred. get what's called a disciplinary infraction that could lead to the whole and a transfer and more charges. They get bored. They may want to make a name for themselves. Indeed, anytime someone who serves time with a celebrity, they come home, you know what they do? They call us. Hey, do you want to interview me? I served time with Jennifer Shaw or so-and-so. No, I don't. So there are people looking potentially for attention who may be bored, who want to create some violence and problems, who may be looking to exploit her or take advantage of her or call her out. For that reason, her experience as a high-profile prisoner will be harder because all of the eyes will be on her in a way that no eyes were on me when I went to federal prison, which is why she needs to understand her environment. She needs to recognize women have lived here for weeks, months, years, and decades before asserting her authority and doing things that can lead to trouble, like speaking to staff or just acting kind of hoity-toity, like this is above me, I shouldn't be here, looking down at other people. It's kind of a thing. Prisoners have a taste of it. They know. So she really has to be aware of her environment. She needs to understand. She needs to listen. She should do very little talking. And she should learn to say no. She is not obligated to walk the track with someone that first day or at all. She is not obligated to do anything than her job, stand for count, and avoid problems. And if she can do that, eventually we are going to forget about her. All of you will eventually forget about Elizabeth Holmes. She wants to be forgotten about in prison as quickly as she possibly can. Of that, I'm sure. Number 5, what's the over-under on how long she will serve in prison and can she get parole? There is no parole in the federal prison system. I hope that it comes back. On her sentence, she's going to get 20 months good time. She's going to get 12 months off for the Prison Reform Act, the First Step Act that passed in late 2018. You can expect her to get 12 months in the halfway house, which essentially takes 135 months down to 90 months, which is 7.5 years in prison. People are saying, have said she's only going to get 15% off. She'll get that, but there is more with the First Step Act, which will take an additional year in prison. I should note there are people who lose the good time or the 15% if they engage in the prison hustle and get caught. Everyone says, I'm never going to get into trouble, Justin. I'm not going to use an iPhone. I'm not going to not do my job. I'm not going to go into another dorm without permission. I'm not going to speak disrespectfully to staff. I'm not going to gamble. And then they get comfortable in this environment and they do it. They could lose this good time. So when I predict that she will serve 7.5 years in prison, it's presuming she avoids problems and she's able to keep all of her good time. Number 6, what trouble exists and what happens if she gets into trouble? And the person said, I want her to get into trouble. I hate that she's going to get some good time. So I just touched on it. Trouble includes things like the iPhone, not showing up for your job, speaking disrespectfully to staff, getting caught running a business in federal prison. You can get written up for a disciplinary infraction, and the consequence can be losing good time. There are people who, like, they surrender to prison, they make a 3-way phone call, and they don't know that a 3-way phone call is not allowed. That is a disciplinary infraction. You can lose time. If you act inappropriately in visitation, you can embrace at the beginning and an end. If they deem you've taken advantage of that privilege, they can write you up for a disciplinary infraction. If staff feels you have said something that threatens the security of the institution, they could write you up. So Elizabeth Holmes, like any federal prisoner, should go to bop.gov and spend hours reading the inmate handbook. It may put you to sleep. It could cure insomnia, but the prison doesn't prepare you. People get into trouble. They didn't know that it was a problem. And the staff will say, that's your bad. We gave you the inmate handbook. I say prisoner, they say inmate. We gave you the inmate handbook. That you didn't read it is your fault. I can't change it. You're not prepared. You're a big girl. Do it. So many people who never imagined they would get into trouble get into trouble, and the consequences are significant because it could lead to a longer federal prison term. Now, there are some people who are serving 10 years or more who don't care if they lose their good time because they can't even imagine they're ever going to get released. Like there was that sex offender, Josh Duger, I think is his name, who got caught with an iPhone, didn't care. They took 3 months away of good time. I think he has another iPhone. He's going to get caught again. You know what he's telling himself? I don't care. I want an iPhone so I can get on the internet, FaceTime my kids and my fans. I don't care. Take it all away. I'm going to have as many luxuries as I possibly can here on the inside. A lot of people actually serve time that way. If it were me, I would encourage Elizabeth Holmes to not serve time that way, though so many people do. Number 7, why is she not enduring diesel therapy? That would be the real pain, man. I had a cousin in a prison camp, and dude loved it, said it was easy. I hate she will be in a ritzy country club while I work a full-time job, honestly, to pay my bills. That has upset a number of people that Elizabeth Holmes has avoided the diesel therapy or transit. Yes, she was indicted, but she was out on bond for many years. Some judges, like Judge Demetrioulas in Tampa, if you get sentenced to a day, a week, a month, a year, or 10 years, when you are sentenced, you are immediately put into handcuffs and you go through the marshal service. You go through the marshals for weeks and months before you end up at the prison. In this case, the judge has allowed her to remain free, go directly to the federal prison, and endure the heartache that is transit. I didn't endure it. My partner served 26 years in prison. He endured it for years from Victorville to Oklahoma. That's when you're in shackles and chains. You're on the bus, you're on the airplane, you're in holding centers, you're going to the bathroom in front of 40, 50 people. You're in with all sorts of criminals. You're in with murderers and rapists and thugs. They don't segregate when you're in segregation, when you're in diesel therapy or when you're in transit. So when this person said, why is she not enduring diesel therapy? That would be the real pain. It is very difficult to endure transit for that extended period of time. The benefit for people who go through transit, once they get to the camp, they kind of feel like they're at Disneyland or a country club because they've endured so much. When people say, I hate that she will be in a ritzy country club while I work a full-time job, I hear that a lot. I'll remind all of you, Elizabeth Holmes did not create the system of corrections in this country. Yes, it's a minimum security camp. People say it looks like a country club because she has so much room to roam throughout the day. There are no fences and barbed wire. There aren't controlled movements like you see in higher security prisons where you have 15 minutes to go from the dorm to the chow hall. So that frustrates people. I'll remind you, she didn't create it. And she's got to make the most of what she has there. But I know many of you are frustrated at what the living situations will be like. And it's part of the reason over the years, victims of our clients have called to say, I don't want this person in prison any longer. I want this person home and working so they could actually pay me back. That happened in a video I filmed with Jennifer Shaw, a client who's at Bryan Federal Prison Camp who may meet Elizabeth Holmes next week. Should Jennifer Shaw be in prison for 6.5 years or maybe 2 years or less? She's working, paying back the people that she owes money to. That is our position, but we can't change that she's going to a minimum security camp. Number 8, hey dude, what's wrong with you? You're crazier than the last guy. I don't know who the last guy was. What's wrong with you? Why are you talking about alcohol or drug abuse? You are way off course. I mentioned in a video that there is a chance Elizabeth Holmes could only serve 6.5 years in prison. Someone here commented, how long will she serve on her 11.5-year sentence? Earlier, I mentioned it would be 7.5 years. There is a chance, however, that she participates in the residential drug abuse program that could take 1 full year off of your sentence. Brian offers this program. It is a 9-month, 500-hour program. This guy said, dude, you are crazy. There is no alcohol or drug abuse. I haven't read Elizabeth Holmes' probation report. Have any of you? Have you read the PSR? The probation report could disclose that she has a history of substance abuse or alcohol. And if she did, she would be eligible for this program that would take 1 full year off of her sentence. And because I've been doing this with my team since 2009, and we've had thousands of people in our community, I know of people who have said the same thing. This guy does not have a drug problem. What is wrong with you? And then like 3 years later, the guy's home from prison a year early. Like, what are you doing home? Yeah, I participated in this program and it was awesome. And it helped me get help for my alcohol problem. But it also helped me get out of prison a year early. So I want all of you, 2:44 p.m. in Irvine, California on the 24th of May, to make a note. If 3 or 4 years from now or 5 years from now, you read a note that Elizabeth Holmes has participated in this program and she's gotten a year out of an extra year off of her sentence, I want you to think of your friend, Justin McPerney at White Collar Advice, that I predicted that this could happen. And it happens so much. It's so frequent. And if she gets this program, she's only going to serve 6.5 years in prison instead of 7.5 years in prison. Number 9, I often wonder what I think as the potential for revenge assignments. Am I a terrible person that I want her to have a revenge assignment in federal prison? You've noted that incoming inmates are assigned jobs. Is this a random assignment, or is there something we can do to ensure she gets a revenge assignment? Okay, look, there's nothing that you can do to ensure she's going to get a revenge assignment, though I understand you want her scrubbing toilets and showers, which is something I had mentioned previously. Let me tell you what the Bureau of Prison cares about: security of the institution and keeping costs down. There are some prisons that will send new, young, healthy prisoners to the kitchen for 120 days or 5 or 6 months to fulfill that requirement in food service. Some prisons will allow the prisoners to look around to find out if there's a job opening. Like Jennifer Shaw got an excellent job in the library, but she went in with her release plan, something Elizabeth Holmes I don't think has. So Jennifer Shaw prepared properly. She set herself up to have a great job in the library because of her preparations before she went in. I don't know if Elizabeth is doing that. The Bureau of Prisons doesn't want additional scrutiny right now. They've had myriad problems through COVID, like problems all throughout the country. There's a new director. The BOP, there's new leadership there. So what they don't want is Elizabeth Holmes' legal team to be going on TV talking about how they're giving her a revenge assignment or making it more difficult on her. So they're not going to give her anything. They're not going to favor her, but they're not going to deliberately make it harder on her. Typically, they assign a job based on needs of the institution. It could be food service, it could be commissary, it could be the library, it could be agriculture, it could be checking out pickleballs. But I do not expect the case manager to assign her a job that will result in a revenge assignment, as much as you would all like to see her scrubbing toilets and showers. Actually, back to the job for a while. She will be offered an opportunity immediately. Like, I'm talking like, hi, I've been in prison for 7 seconds, and people are already coming up to me telling me they're going to do my job for a book of stamps. Of course, that's a disciplinary infraction. Some staff doesn't care. I would encourage Elizabeth Holmes, any prisoner, to do your job. Work is honorable. It shows that you're willing to contribute to the community of felons. It shows that you're not better than other people. And the tragic irony is at times you pay someone to do your job and then they don't even do their job. So how do you hold the person you paid accountable to do their job when they don't do it? Now nobody's doing the job. And you tell the person, why aren't you doing the job I paid you to do? And they're like, shut your mouth. You want us to both get into trouble? You paid me to do it. Now, just all bad. So if her job is to scrub toilets and showers, guess what she should do? She should scrub toilets and showers, and it's better than not doing work. Number 10. This has come up more than 1,000 times, especially with the white collar advice TikTok. She had kids. Did she have kids as a part of her plan to obtain leniency or stay out of prison? And what do you think her children will think when they learn they were only born to avoid prison? Her children will Google their mom and learn they were only born so she could avoid prison. What normal person would do that? You know, I'm a father. I mean, that's a big statement there. I see it differently, and I know that upsets some of you, and it could lead to leaving this live stream and disliking and telling me you're never going to return. But I'm here to speak openly and honestly about what I think. I don't think, and I'm going to tell you why in a moment, I don't think she had children simply to avoid prison. She's 39 now. She met a man. She said she fell in love. Who am I to dispute if she fell in love? She knew a lengthy sentence was coming if she lost. She knew if she served 6 or 7 years of that, she's going to be home at 45 or 46. She has resources with the boyfriend and family to help sustain and support it. I don't think she had children simply to avoid getting a shorter federal prison sentence because, and this is part of why I'm filming this video, the truth about federal prison. I've been to 1,000 sentencing hearings. We've worked with a lot of people. So people may say it and they may believe it. Just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. I've been to sentencing hearings where judges will say, I'm not going to not send you to prison because you're a mother. There are thousands of women in federal prison all across the country and world who have children. You should have thought about that before you broke the law. Of course, I'm going to send you to federal prison. Could it be a mitigating factor? Yes, I suppose. Did her lawyers try to sell that she's a mother and she's a daughter? Yes, but it never really works with judges, which is why when I see people thinking she only had babies to avoid going to prison, I disagree because I know from experience it really doesn't influence a federal judge. Maybe at 37, 38, 39, she simply wanted to be a mom and recognized in the totality of her life, this is a little blip. It's a little blip, right? If you live to be 100 and she's going to serve 6 or 7 years, that is a little blip. Get on with your life. Eventually, people will forget about her. And if she raises her children properly with the right tone and the right messaging, and I know many of you think that is absolutely impossible because you call her a sociopath, but she has more than the lion's share of moms in prison. The money, the resources, the parents. Come on. I know these kids may endure some trauma at some point, but it's all about the messaging. I'm a young father of a 5 and 8-year-old, and I love them with all of my life. And my children now know that I went to prison, and my daughter asks me about it. And why did I go? And someone told her at school only bad people go to prison, but she doesn't see me as a bad person. How to reconcile that? You reconcile it, I would tell Elizabeth Holmes, by building a new record, by documenting it over time. I did that through the books that are behind me and my journal and my books, and over the last 14 years by building a new record. And I suspect and hope she's able to do that with her children, who will indeed suffer the stigma and the consequence of having not just a parent in prison, but someone who is just loathed. I mean, the enmity for this woman is unparalleled. And we don't work with Elizabeth. We've worked with thousands of white collar defendants going through the system. And if she were a client of our team, I'd say she's at the top of the list, which is saying a lot, because we've worked with a lot of people who have done some bad things. So no, I do not think she had kids in a sinister fashion to avoid getting out of prison, because here's the way that she actually could have got out of prison with the babies. The First Step Act, you're not going to hear this anywhere online, by the way. This is inside information, okay? This is inside information. The way that she could have gotten out of prison early because of the babies follows. The First Step Act, which passed in late 2018, has a compassionate release provision or component that could allow a pregnant prisoner who has some health issues in the third trimester of the pregnancy, if I said that incorrectly, forgive me, could allow a person to be released from prison by way of a compassionate release. So just like during COVID, thousands of prisoners were released to home confinement, like Michael Cohen and others. If she was pregnant in prison, she could have applied for a compassionate release to serve her sentence on home confinement because of the pregnancy. And we know of some people who were successful on that. So I will tell you, if she goes to prison and the word gets out on the street that she's pregnant, disregard everything I've said in number 10 here. Disregard everything I've said. I will have been wrong. You should unsubscribe and leave a terrible comment, because I've been duped, I've been bamboozled. But if she's pregnant, again, there is a chance that could lead to a compassionate release, which would have been the time to do it if the only goal was to try to get out of prison with the children. Number 11, will Elizabeth Holmes be required to pay restitution in prison? That's a big affirmative. Okay, I think Judge Davila hit her with $452 million in restitution. This is what happens. There have been changes to restitution primarily because of R. Kelly. When R. Kelly was convicted, they saw that he had like $38,000 in his commissary account. And like, imagine getting Democrats and Republicans to agree on something in this climate. Like, it's really rare. But guess what both Democrats and Republicans agreed on? That they should take all of the money from R. Kelly. They were stunned at how much money he had in his commissary account, that it wasn't going to victims. So there are changes coming within the Bureau of Prisons, where it's kind of like voluntary payment, but it's really you really have to make payments in prison. It's moving towards mandatory payments in much higher numbers. So yes, she's going to participate in what's called financial responsibility program, where every month they will take anywhere from $25 to $100 to $200 a month from her books, from her commissary, and send it towards the victims. When it gets to the victims, I mean, I don't know if Rupert Murdoch's going to be pumped up about the $40 he's getting towards the $125 million he's owed. But yes, she will be making payments towards her restitution. The more money that comes in, the more they may take, which comes to an earlier question of like, what can she do to avoid trouble, or how do troubles pop up? People get into trouble when, like, this could happen with Elizabeth Holmes. She may say, you know what, it costs $500 to live well here. I have 500 come in. They're taking 300 for my restitution. I don't have enough to shop in the commissary, because I know, like eating in the chow hall, I don't like the bologna and the stale and processed food, but they're taking all of my money. I can't shop in the commissary. It's going to victims. Does Rupert Murdoch really need my money? So what Elizabeth Holmes could do is she could find another prisoner that doesn't owe restitution, that doesn't spend their $360 a month. And she could say, you know what, how about I pay you $50 a month and you shop for me, and I'm going to have the money go to you. It's part of the reason in prison parking lots after a visit, you see spouses and girlfriends meeting, Venmoing each other, PayPaling each other money, because money may go to another prisoner's books, which could help her avoid paying her financial responsibility program. She will be making payments while in prison. What opportunities exist for education or rehabilitation will be available for her while while in prison? I saw that question come up right now. She could absolutely earn a college degree while she's in prison, finish it. Don't think it'll be at Stanford, but there are prisons that offer correspondence programs. The nonprofit my business partner, Michael Santos, runs, we're in prisons all across the country, will actually be a productive activity here soon for the First Step Act. So she will go through our programs and others. Those programs will enable her to get earned time credits towards the First Step Act, which is great. So there are good programs on the inside. There's the drug program and parenting programs. There's myriad programs. What I have learned is the real rehabilitation for me and for many prisoners is self-paced and self-directed. It's sitting in the library. As Michael Sanchez used to say to me, I'm going to stare at a blank wall and I'm going to think and I'm going to create and I'm going to build a new record, grow my network, prove worthy of the love and support of my family. She needs to do that. So there will be some educational programs that she will go through to help pass the time. She'll get some knowledge. It will help lead to an earlier release from prison. But the real growth is going to be her sitting in that quiet room or library, thinking about the choices she made that led her to federal prison for 135 months and what can she do to reconcile and prove worthy of the love and support of her family and young children, and ensuring this 11 years or 135 months does not amount to a life sentence, which it does and tends to be for so many people. How will Elizabeth Holmes, number 13, adjust to life in federal prisons routines and restrictions? I presume she'll be busy working on her appeal. Yes, you can expect any free time that she has to be in the library working on her appeal. She will have access to email, and I'll address this later. She'll have access to email, but all emails are read and stored. People actually get into trouble because they will email something home and the prison could read it. They get into trouble. She will not have private email communications with her lawyers. She will have access to private visits with her lawyer. She will have legal mail that cannot be read. I'll say legal mail on the outside. So you can expect her to spend the lion's share of her time working on her appeal. To the daily routine and structure, it takes a while to adjust living in a very loud, noisy environment. It takes a while to get used to just the restrooms, and it can be filthy, and standing in line with a roll of toilet paper to use the restroom, and being around people who you have never been around before, who are used to struggle and trauma, and living in prison is nothing to them. I've joked, if you go from a 500 square foot apartment to prison, it's an adjustment, let alone a mansion. So it will be a struggle to see. It can be a struggle to adjust to the daily routines. Like, you have a job for the next 3 hours, and if you show up late, you're going to be in trouble. It could be hard for her to get back to the dorm for the standing count. It could be tough for her to stand in line to go to the chow hall and eat food that is highly processed and food that she has never had to consume before. It can be difficult for her to avoid the TV room, which is something that I would encourage her to do. It can be difficult to adjust to prisoners calling her out. Hey, you're the rich girl, you're the celebrity, you're the white privileged person who's been out on bond all of these years, but I got remanded and taken into custody. If I had your money and your lawyer, I'd have been the same as you. It's not fair. I don't like your treatment. Why do you have it better than me? How does she respond to that? There's got to be some humility and deference, and recognize she shouldn't be concerned about her present reputation, but rather, is she avoiding problems and working on tasks that get her closer to her goals? 2 restrictions, sure, there are some. You can leave the dorm at certain times. Of course, even though it's staked out of bounds, you can't leave. There are certain times that you can visit, call, and email. And later in this video, I'm going to get into some kind of what the communications actually look like. What will happen, number 14, what will happen to Elizabeth Holmes' remaining assets and financial resources? When she sat for the probation interview, she disclosed all of her income and assets. I assure you the government knows everything, because if she lied, that's a new charge. I know someone recently who lied to the government about their assets. He was indicted. So the government knows every penny. They're not going to leave her penniless, but at this time, the government does a pretty good job of ensuring the lawyers get paid and they're still owed money. So any assets and resources she has, they're going to the government. Follow up to this question, someone said, why aren't the family and the boyfriend paying the victims? Would you? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. People loathe this woman so much, and her friends and family, that they should be responsible. When I went to prison, I owed restitution. I've since paid it in full. It wasn't my brother or my parents' job to pay it. They didn't do anything wrong. So when some of you think the wealthy fiance or boyfriend, who I agree has said some really foolish and stupid things in that New York Times article, that he doesn't want to lose, he doesn't want to get a dad bod. How stupid, no awareness. That doesn't change that even though he has said some stupid things, he and Her family shouldn't be responsible for paying the hundreds of millions of dollars in restitution. They didn't do anything wrong. Continuing. This is one that comes up. This is one that comes up a lot. What could she have done to get a shorter federal prison sentence? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. I'd love to cooperate against Balwani. I'd love to be your number one your number one witness. Help you any way I can. And as a thank you, U.S. government, please write a coveted 5K1 letter and articulate to Judge Davila why I'm worthy of leniency and I'm a young mom. Had she said that, she'd have got like 3 years or 4 years. She'd have been out of there in 18 months. Instead, she decided to go rogue. She went down a different situation. This one come up 100 times. What is one thing she would like to do over? I can tell you, I failed. I'm sorry. I started this company. It's not working. Rather than give me any more money, let me tell you the truth. It no working. I'm sorry. You've lost your investment, Rupert Murdoch. Have a nice day. I'm going to try again. It is okay to say you failed. She didn't say that. She doubled and tripled down and put up this facade and tricked everyone. So what could she have done to have avoided prison? It's very clear. I failed. I'm sorry. I'll do better. Have a nice day. If she did that, none of us would be talking about Elizabeth Holmes. Number 17, what steps can Elizabeth Holmes take to rebuild her reputation and regain trust after serving her sentence? At some point, she's going to have to own it and acknowledge that she did some things incorrectly and begin to think of others before she thinks of herself and put herself in the shoes of other people and how they perceive her, and perhaps craft a message that is more focused on them and reconciliation and remorse rather than me, I didn't mean to do it. It was Balwani and others. If she's unable to do that, she will never get her reputation back. And while she'll always have, I presume, a beautiful home and a family that has resources, she's never going to have the dignity that comes with accepting responsibility. There's dignity in saying, I did it. There's dignity in saying, I'm going to do better. The real humiliation is not necessarily making bad choices, because as human beings, we can make bad choices. The humiliation is when you don't say, I want to do better. I recognize it. I've examined my behavior. Here's my path to doing better. So I would argue part of the success I've had, or people with whom we work have had, they're successful because they get to a point where they say, I did it. I blame no one. Here's how I'm going to do better. Hold me accountable. She will never get her reputation back until she does that. Okay, we're making progress here. Number 18. Will Elizabeth Holmes have access to medical care and treatment while in federal prison? Yes, she will, though I can tell you the medical care in prison, it ain't Stanford, it ain't Yale. Think about the dynamic, or a person that wants to become a case manager in prison. Like whatever you do in your life, think about if you're a physician, a doctor, a teacher, an executive, like you worked really hard to get there. Think about the dynamic or the DNA of a case manager or counselor or a physician who goes to work in a prison hospital, right? The medical treatment, it ain't so good. Okay. Their famous line is, there's nothing really wrong with you. Here's an ibuprofen. And they'll assess, like, if your release date is 6 months or a year into the future, they'll just say, treat it at home. Now, there are some people who are really sick and they're required to perform surgery and go to the hospital. But even then, it's not your physician. It's not your choice. And sometimes the surgeries or services they give you are not what you would get in the community. So if Elizabeth Holmes gets sick and she has problems, she can go to medical, but it's not going to be the treatment that she expects. Even medications that she may take, they give you generics. And oftentimes medications you need, they won't give you. So I would encourage Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth, if you're watching, I'm not joking, she could be watching this right now. I know someone in her community reached out and said she watched a video I filmed about how to get a shorter federal prison sentence. I said she watched it. She didn't do nothing, but fine. If you're watching this, it's essential that she goes to bop.gov and looks at the Bureau of Prison formulary list, as it will give her an indication of what she's taking now and what they will transition her to in prison, because it is a shock to go to prison to begin with. But when you aren't getting medications or you're sick and you're ill, it's even harder. And I will say that's the hardest part of being in prison, besides being away from your family. Like when you get sick, I had a stomach flu there one time and I was sick as a dog and I did not want to go to work, even though I was sick, because it looked bad and I didn't go, but I did. It was just awful. Like, what do I do? Being sick in federal prison, not getting treated, is very concerning in federal prison. And it's usually the one time that I encourage prisoners to really stand up for themselves. Like, if you don't have the best job, fine. The best bunk, fine. You want more people approved to visit, they haven't, fine. You just endure those things. But medical issues are very important. And if you're not getting treated, it's vital that she writes what would be called like an administrative remedy. It's a request to staff to better tend to her medical needs. You want to be careful about writing too many of those, as it could be off-putting to staff. Will Elizabeth Holmes, number 20, only a few left. Will Elizabeth Holmes Be able to well, how will Elizabeth Holmes' religious or spiritual needs be accommodated during her prison term? The Bureau of Prisons does a pretty good job of respecting prisoners' needs. As a Jew, I went to many Friday night services, and the warden would allow, like, grape juice and some challah. That was pretty cool. Very supportive during Ramadan, though I've heard some complaints about that at Bryan Federal Prison Camp. But you'll find the BOP does a pretty good job respecting religious services because they don't want to get sued. But also they do respect it. There's a chaplain, there's a chapel. Oftentimes there'll be, if you join that community, you'll do events together. You can leave the prison, people will come into the prison and you can perform. It's a wonderful way to serve time. And many people would argue it's the best part of their experience through prison, growing closer. And I would argue, while I'm critical of the Bureau of Prisons, one thing they tend to do pretty well is respect the religious needs of people in federal prison. 21, will Elizabeth Holmes be able to receive and send emails or use any form of electronic communication while in prison? Yes, she'll be able to send and receive emails, presuming she doesn't get a disciplinary infraction and lose that a nicety or privilege that's been given to her. Indeed, not all prisoners have access to email. So she'll have access to email. She'll have access to good old snail mail. She'll have visits, but she'll also have, female prisons have what male prisons do not, the video chats. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get set up. I've done it with myriad female clients in prison, but she'll be able to do a video chat. She'll be in her brown uniform. There'll be a link, and it's like a 15-minute call where she'll be able to do a video chat with her family. Of course, there are some prisons also have tablets where you have access to programs that we also create. So there could be tablets, email. Of course, there's going to be tons of illegal devices like iPhones and Androids and whatnot. But you could expect her to be on that email machine all day at 5 cents a minute. Some prisoners use email to the point where it's like they're obsessed with it, kind of like we're obsessed with our iPhone or smart device here. They just adjust in prison by way of these devices. But if email goes down or they take it away or something happens, they then really sink into federal prison because they've been conditioned or institutionalized to these devices or calling home. So I would encourage her or anyone to use the email in dosages that are like manageable. But some people are on it all day to the point where it's absolutely too much. 22. And by the way, when I'm done with this, I'll scroll through some of these and offer some comments. What kind of recreational activities or hobbies will be available to Miss Holmes during her prison term? Don't tell me she'll be able to play pickleball. Okay. Joe from Virginia, I've got some bad news for you. There's a chance Elizabeth Holmes becomes the pickleball champion of Bryan Federal Prison Camp. That's why some people call it a country club. This place looks like a corporate office park or junior college. You get there, it's stunning that right in front of you is a beautiful track, handball, pickleball, bocce ball, volleyball, softball, soccer field. There are so many activities that it's mind-blowing, which is why some people get upset about all of the possibilities, including the recreational activities that she will have in federal prison. I would encourage Elizabeth Holmes or any prisoner to not do the softball 4 or 5 days a week. You become beholden to practice. There's gambling. If you get hurt, coming back to the medical issues I mentioned earlier, you will never be the same. We have had people tear their ACL, injure themselves in prison. They lay on that dirt track for 6 hours because in a minimum security camp, it's kind of like the stepchild of the institution. Even standalone institutions, you don't really have the doctors and staff there to the degree that you need. So you tear your ACL, you're laying there for 4 hours. Even if you're a fellow prisoner and doctor, you're not allowed to pick that person up and carry him over to medical. You're not allowed to touch another prisoner. So I've had like clients say, dude, I did everything great in prison. The biggest mistake I made followed. I tore my ACL playing volleyball. I still can't walk till this day. You will never get the treatment. So yes, she'll have ample opportunity to exercise, but I would encourage her not to get hurt. How will Elizabeth Holmes' meal and dietary requirements be managed in federal prison? There's a vegan menu, so you know, more fruits and vegetables. But if you get caught shopping in the prison commissary and buying things you're not allowed to, that's a disciplinary infraction. I don't know if she's vegan. I'm just speculating. There is a kosher menu that you can sign up for, whether you're really kosher or not, before you go in. You can sign up for the kosher menu because you're going to get more fruits and vegetables. Short of that, the food is heavily processed. Like in the morning, you're going to see some pancakes and some rundown eggs. And if it's fruit, it's run down. If the vegetables are there, it's run down. A lot of tortillas, a lot of rice, a lot of beans, a lot of turkey meat, a lot of bologna. Every now and again, like on holidays, you may get chicken or pizza or some things that are more desirable. But suffice to say, she may not love shopping in the commissary, which means she will really become reliant of shopping She may not love eating in the chow hall as I did not. They'll post a menu. She'll become reliant shopping in the commissary, where she'll have access to $360 a month to spend. But that goes for everything, right? I mean, she's got to buy her roast beef and tuna and Coca-Cola and granola and toothpaste and shoes and Walkman. You can get an MP3 player while there, which is pretty cool. So she's going to learn to love shopping in the commissary, and in time she'll form friendships with people. They'll buy things together. They're going to cook together, and you can share in some really great meals together. Some of the best meals I've ever had in my whole life were in federal prison. Of course, I couldn't cook them because I can't really cook anything. I would pay a prisoner with a book of stamps to cook it for me. Now, some of you may be thinking, Justin, are you allowed to do that? Once Elizabeth Holmes is in prison for a while, she'll learn the written and unwritten rules of the prison. There are things that staff will not allow. You got to do your job. You cannot have an iPhone. You cannot go into another dorm. You cannot speak disrespectfully to staff. There are things you cannot do. But staff also recognizes there are prisoners who have been there for weeks, months, years, and decades who don't have family, who don't have money, and they know the only way that prisoner is sustaining themselves by doing the chores and jobs of other people, even if they turn away from it. It's kind of implicit, even if they turn the other way from it, but they know cooking is a very popular way for people to earn money. They will turn the other way from that because they want to make sure that prisoner has resources, $30, $40, $50 a month to shop in the commissary. Back to her work. Someone asked about work. 15 cents to probably $1 an hour. She's going to want to find a job that's an hour or two a day at 15 cents an hour so she could work on her appeal and her other interests. 24, will Elizabeth Holmes have any privacy or personal space in her living quarters? Will she have a cellmate? And what is the pairing like? It's not a cellmate. We call it a bunkie. I believe at Bryan, there's like a cubicle that can house 2 to 8 people. Once she gets there, they will put her with someone who's in for a white-collar crime or a drug crime. It's kind of based on need, kind of like getting assigned a job. It's based on need. They will put her in this cubicle with other people. Some won't care that she's there. Other will welcome her. Other may chastise and try to embarrass her and say, you just come in here. I've been here for a while. These are the rules. This is what you do. And she's going to have to observe how some new prisoners get into trouble, speaking too loudly on the phone, changing in the cubicle instead of going to a private shower stall, using the restroom, which a lot of prisoners tend to do, and then forget to wash their hands if they're running back for count. She truly needs to recognize that all of the eyes will be upon her, and rather than caring about her reputation, she should be kind, deferential, and say thank you. And yes, again, it is okay to accept some items. I was frustrated when I heard somebody who's never been to prison say she can't accept anything or she'll be extorted. Nonsense. But yes, it is an open living situation, and that takes some getting used to. If you're a light sleeper, take some, the noise and the locker and the burping and the hollering and the smells, and some women don't care and coming in and out of the TV room all night. And new prisoners tend to be at the front of the dorm, which is right next to the bathroom, which might not smell great, and it's dirty and it's filthy. And I know every now and again when I say that, all you hope that happens for her. I want her to avoid problems, get home to her family, and at some point send a message to someone. Send it to me, Elizabeth. I'll take it. I'm sorry. This is how I plan to do better. I did that when I got into prison. My whole life changed. Someone commented about hygiene. That's true. In time, if she's in the front of the dorm, you know where she's going to want to work her way to? The back of the dorm. And part of the way you get to the back of the dorm is if a long-term prisoner wants to bunk with you. I was fortunate to be in the front of the dorm for like a short time because I was clean. I like to brush my teeth. I like to floss. I like to make sure that I was, that I looked hygienic, and I'd go to bed early and I'd wake up very early and I'd leave my locker open and I'd say to my bunkie, dude, take whatever you want. It's fine. I don't really care. So I was like a cool dude to live with, and I never complained. So she needs to embrace that same mantra or philosophy. And if she does, a long-term prisoner may come to her and say, hey, put in a request to your case manager. My bunkie just transferred or she went home. Come back and live with me. So I love that comment. It's all about hygiene, Mr. Big Wheel. Thank you. It's true. If she's hygienic and clean and shares and doesn't complain and has a good routine, she could work her way from the front of the dorm where it's loud and noisy and kind of crazy to the back of the dorm where you have longer term prisoners who are more respected. 3 months into my federal prison term, I went to the back of the dorm. It changed everything. Last question. What will the visiting policy for Elizabeth Holmes' family and friends be like during her prison term? Immediate family, her boyfriend actually is not immediate family. So her parents should immediately be approved to visit. So they would not have to fill out a visitation form. Some case managers will say, I still want them to fill out the form anyway and send it back. That could delay visiting 2 weeks. But the probation report would disclose immediate family, her children and parents, and that would enable them to visit without having to get approved. If not, there's a visitation form the person fills out, sends to the case manager. It has to be answered honestly. Visits at Brian, Elizabeth Holmes will be able to see her friends and family, up to 5 people, I believe, at any visit. Saturdays and Sundays from 8:30 in the morning until like 3 o'clock. I actually put up a blog at whitecollaradvice.com earlier today talking about visitation in prison and how to make sure it's a good visit. But a number of prisoners complain and they kvetch, as us Jews like to say, and they make it miserable on their families. So I would encourage Elizabeth Holmes, as she prepares to visit in federal prison, recognize it's expensive for your family to get there. It's cumbersome. It's tiring. You're bringing toddlers there. They love you and they support you amidst all the struggle. Prove worthy of that love and support. Don't complain about the food or your job or your bunk or the cleanliness of the bathroom, or you're not able to work on your appeal as much as you'd like. Do not do that. Don't make it about you, Elizabeth. It's about your family and the efforts they're going through to come and see you. 2 visits. At the beginning of the visit, you can do a handshake, an embrace, or a kiss within the bounds, the BOP says, of good taste at the beginning and end of a visit. I know people who have gotten too touchy-feely during the visit. They shut down the visit, which punishes everyone because everyone has to suffer. And then that person can get a disciplinary infraction. That's another part of the reason she's got to avoid problems. If she does something wrong, they punish everyone. Now, I know many of you, she has young children. Here's what her baby daddy will be allowed to bring in for the infants. Allowed to bring into the visit 8 diapers, 1 package of baby wipes in a clear plastic bag, 1 change of infant clothes, 3 clear baby bottles with contents if there's breast milk, 3 jars of unopened baby food. I would also, to visitation, encourage her friends and family to dress appropriately, because if you don't, they're going to shut down the visit. For example, you cannot wear a bathing suit, a miniskirt, crop tops, sundress, halter tops, backless tops, hat, or caps. My wonderful mom one time was turned away from a visit because she just had a shirt on that they said was right here. It needed to go down. She had to go to the local Target or Walmart. It delayed our visit a good 2.5 hours. Visitation will be a wonderful opportunity for her, though it's also devastating at the end of the visit. I recall when I was in federal prison, seeing young children at the end of the visit crying hysterically, hanging on to their father's legs. Like, Daddy, don't go, please. Like, I don't want to go. That's devastating. Part of the reason I was grateful, I was in prison without a wife, without children. It was just me, which made it much easier to bear. It was devastating to see children leave their parents at the end of a visit. And I have no doubt, while parts of the visit for Elizabeth Holmes will be wonderful, you can imagine, I get chills when I say it, the devastation of seeing her 2 young babies go in one direction and she's going to go in another. That's very difficult to endure. I'm going to read some of these questions. Before I do, I'm so grateful that all of you have joined White Collar Advice on this journey. And again, I call this the truth about what she can expect in federal prison, because while people have good intentions, I've seen so much misinformation. Let me go through some of these questions here from the bottom to the top. I don't see her adjusting well whatsoever. Maybe people would have said the same about me. I complained. I was a baby. I was 33. I blamed everyone but myself for my plight in life. And when I got to prison, I found a mentor, Michael Santos, who got me on track, and prison changed my life for the better. It's the greatest experience of my life up until that point. If I can do it, can't she do it? If I can do it and other people have done it, can't she do it? If she can do it and avoid problems and find perspective, express gratitude, and recognize throughout history people have endured worse, right? Think about that. Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps, Mandela, 27 years. People have endured worse and they've emerged with their dignity. I think she can do it. I believe that she can do it. People commenting, yes, it's about hygiene. Thank you for that comment. I'm really curious about your book. My book is free. Do not buy it. I'm out of the book. This is my second book, Ethics in Motion, that's required reading at a number of business schools. Lessons from Prison is free at White Collar Advice. Don't buy it. The downside is if you opt in, you may get some marketing emails from us if you're a prospective client. Get the book, unsubscribe immediately. Do not buy the book. Why didn't Elizabeth Holmes just buy a regular plane ticket from Mexico? But it never works. It never works. I did a TikTok video. By the way, I filmed some really interesting videos about Holmes and others at White Collar Advice TikTok. It never works. Run, leave the country. We're stupid criminals. Like we leave the country and then we use our debit card and they find us like 10 minutes later. She's not running anywhere. Okay. She's going to prison for 11 years. She's going to be out in 7.5 years or 6.5 years. And she's probably hoping that a different president gets elected who tends to at times grant pardons to people who are powerful. I'm not going to mention who because I'm too busy to follow politics and I avoid that on my channel. But there are some people who are famous and who might know the right people who are able to get a pardon or commutation. I should film a video about a client who turned down a pardon because he didn't think he was worthy of it. He's like, I haven't earned a pardon just because I know someone that knows the president. I'm going to get a pardon. I haven't earned it. No, I'm not taking the pardon. Give it to someone that's earned it. That dude was awesome, by the way. Okay. I think 11 years, she can have a moment of clarity. I agree with that. Do federal inmates group themselves by race like in TV shows? Yeah, there's this misperception that in a country club, that it's like just fun and games and there are no problems. We've got to understand there's volatility inside of these federal prison camps. Indeed, last year at a minimum security camp in Arizona, a camper got a gun, got the gun past visitation, went into visitation to try to kill someone. So when people say, oh, there's no violence there and there's no races there and races don't eat separately in a minimum security camp, it's not true. So when I went to prison, I saw races sitting together and in the TV room, which some prisoners rule like their fiefdom. No idea. Good God. Do not change the TV channel. Yes, you're going to find that there are TV shows that in certain races like to watch. And that's just the reality of it. And popular shows while I was in federal prison, Sons of Anarchy, the Kardashians were really beginning to blow up. Sports, there's going to have like the CNBC on a lot during the day, but you're going to find there are absolutely TV shows that are ruled by race. And I would tell her, do not change the channel in the TV room. It just leads to a lot of problems. I would encourage her to avoid the TV room at all costs. Your prisoners are in there all day. It's truly overwhelming. If it's discovered she hid assets more years in the clink, yeah, she didn't hide no assets. Okay, that much I can tell you. They know everything. It's disclosed in the probation report. They get tax returns, background information, what she owes, her living expenses. She has not hid any assets, but if she did, she signed that probation document under penalty of perjury. It could certainly lead to new charges. I can assure you, they know every penny she has, and any money that she has left is going to the lawyers, and any money that comes in moving forward will go to victims. Now, something that does come up a lot, like what can she do when she comes home? It's harder to be an entrepreneur on the other side if you haven't built a record that shows why you should be an entrepreneur. What I mean is you owe restitution. They may tell her, go work in Kentucky Fried Chicken, go work at McDonald's for minimum wage so you can pay your $200 or $300 a month. All work is honorable, but I didn't want to work at Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is where they sent some new prisoners at the halfway house. So while I was in prison, I did what Elizabeth Holmes should do. I built a record. You see Lessons from Prison that I hand wrote with Michael Santos in prison. That's my prison journal. I wrote a daily blog with Michael documenting why my probation officer should allow me to work for myself as a prison consultant and writer and speaker upon my release in 2009. It wasn't by accident. We organized it. We engineered it. So if Elizabeth Holmes wants to be an entrepreneur again, and she said in that ridiculous, awful New York Times article, she has things to contribute to the world as an entrepreneur. Well, it's not going to happen just by telling the probation officer, yeah, I was a successful entrepreneur at one time. I was a female billionaire. I'd like to go do it again. He's going to say, are you insane? You were just in jail for 7.5 years because of it. So she's got to build a record in prison that shows this is a business plan. It's viable. This is why I don't have to work at Kentucky Fried Chicken. This is where I'm going to work here. But everything changes when you owe money. I'm telling you. Everything changes when you owe money. I owed $500,000. They were after me and I paid it in full. She owes $452 million, her along with Balwani, I should say. So I presume they seized some of his money. I bet it all actually went to lawyers as well. He didn't contribute anything either. But they're going to want the victims paid. Even if the money doesn't go to the victims, even if the victims don't even care. You think Rupert Murdoch needs it? No, they do it as part of the punishment. Also on probation, very difficult to travel unless it's work related. So she's got a very difficult journey ahead of her. Even if she gets out after 7.5 years, she's going to have 3 years of what they call in prison paper or supervised release. As we wrap up here, her prison memoirs will be a big seller. Maybe, not if she complains and blames all day and she does more of that New York Times article. I mean, that was absolutely horrific. Like when I read that when my friend Amy Nelson, you should follow Amy Nelson on TikTok, by the way. She's the one whose family is being ripped apart by Amazon. When Amy sent me that article, I thought it was a joke. Like, I read it and I said, she actually couldn't have done this article. Like, I'm on candid camera. She didn't actually do this. But it turned out she actually did do the interview at the New York Times. Horrific, terrible article. Ain't no one going to read her book if it's blaming and excusing and her dad talking about staying in shape so he doesn't have a dad bod while his wife served 7 years. Forgive me. While his girlfriend served 7 years in prison. It's dumb. It's naive. It lacks any awareness. She is not putting herself in the shoes of stakeholders. So there will be no bestseller if she has the wrong message. People presume if you write a book in prison and you owe money, all the money goes to the. You're not allowed to do so. That's not accurate. Jordan Belfort wrote The Wolf of Wall Street. I wrote Lessons from Prison. I think some people presume because of what happened in the 70s with the killer, Son of Sam in New York, and then he wrote a book in prison, they wanted to take the proceeds. That was a state case. She wouldn't be precluded from earning an income if she wrote a book or did a TV deal. She would have to disclose the income, and you can expect the lion's share of that income to go to her victims, as was the case with me. Now, I self-published my book, but I used it as a tool to help people and bring in potential clients. But when money came in, I turned the lion's share over of it to restitution. She will write a book when she gets out. If she does it correctly, she should write the book while she's there, like as I did. And if I can do it, of course she can do it. I went to USC. She went to Stanford. Isn't Stanford a better school? She didn't graduate. I graduated. Anthony Weiner and Martha Stewart were also in Camp Cupcake. Yeah, people call it Camp Cupcake. The difference with Anthony Weiner and Martha Stewart is much shorter federal prison sentences. Martha Stewart had a huge fortune. Federal prison sentence was very, very brief. It's different when you're serving 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 years in there. Justin, my brother, read your book before you went in and helped him. Thank you for telling me that. As for the country club prison, you could put me in an actual country club and it would still be hell if I were separated from my family. Yeah, that's right, Emily. That's the right point. I mean, the separation from family is devastating. And indeed, there will be times she's in prison where she's going to think, why did I have these young babies? Now, I would tell you, because we've had so many clients go to prison with babies, with young children, this is the easier time. I'm not a mother, I'm a father, but I don't know, maybe I shouldn't speak out of turn here. I know when I have 12, 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, when they go to prison with their father, every kid in high school or even middle school has an iPhone. It's devastating at that time, right? I know of kids who have gone to prison, the Department of Justice press release is plastered outside the classroom because some kids are vicious. That's not going to happen with a newborn and a 2 or 3-year-old. They'll never remember this portion of it, or it will be reduced, and I think easier than if they were 10, 15, 12, 13 years old. That's based on what I've learned. And every client who's gone to prison has said the younger my kids were, the better. But there's no doubt birthdays, holidays, the end of visits are just brutal, that it will be very difficult for her to be away from her family. The New York Times article was a disaster, but prison will be a humbling experience for her. Any chance she comes out of it with a genuine remorse? I sure hope so. That New York Times article was a disaster, and as I filmed in a recent live video, I was surprised she approved it because the Times did a massive piece on my company, White Collar Advice, last year. But I approved it to ensure the messaging was correct. So I can't believe she approved the messaging that was in that article. It was a breakdown from her team, from her lawyers, from her family. It was just more of the same. Unfortunately, any chance she comes out with a genuine remorse? People call me crazy. I think the answer is yes. Any possibility of getting a shiv? Yeah, believe it or not. I just mentioned, I'm not joking here. A few minutes ago, I mentioned that someone in a federal prison camp in Arizona got a gun and tried to kill someone in visitation. So yeah, there are weapons there. People use utensils from the chow hall as a weapon, right? It's part of that's a huge disciplinary infraction. Some guys often take them from the chow hall, or girls, to cook, to get creative, but some can use it for nefarious and really bad things. So those things absolutely happen while there. Continue to go through here. Fight on, Justin. Thank you. 5 years, $5 million. Okay. I'm pretty sure she said she doesn't drink. Again, I mentioned earlier, she could do this drug program. I think one thing we can learn about Elizabeth Holmes, there's a lot of things she says she hasn't done, and it's turned out not necessarily to be true. So telling someone online or elsewhere that she doesn't drink could be a different message that she's given, a different message than she's given to the probation officer in the probation interview, because disclosing drinking or drug use, again, could lead to an extra 1 year off of her federal prison sentence. What will Christmas be like in federal prison? I can tell you Christmas, or Hanukkah in my case, it's kind of a surreal experience, right? Because you're in this dorm that's just all concrete and cement and just really bare bones. And it just looks like what a bureaucracy would look like. It's like a gymnasium with a few beds and offices and a TV and a room to send emails and payphones. So it just looks very cold. And then you have all these ornaments for, for Christmas. So they try, or Hanukkah, they try to decorate it. It's like dressing it up to make it seem like it's festive time, it's Christmas time, but it's like, no, this is still a federal prison. You just put an ornament in a Santa hat. So they'll give you bags of chocolate and goodies in and around that time. You may get a special meal in the chow hall, though on the actual day of Christmas, they close the chow hall early at noon and they give you a bag lunch for lunch and dinner because staff will go home early. I have found serving, I was only there for a year. So for me, it was measurably different, but my partner did 26 years. We have people on our team that have done a long time. They said holidays were a very difficult time in federal prison because it just reminds you of everything that you're missing. That you're missing at home. Someone said everyone has a phone. Not everyone. Some people certainly have a lot of iPhones in prison. Some don't. Some don't get caught. Many do. Part of the problem with iPhones is, and this is a big problem with federal prison, you get comfortable. Think about things in your own life. Like you start a habit. I don't want to be too judgmental here, but I do it. Like I did intermittent fasting for like 2 weeks. I'm like, this is fantastic. I love this intermittent fasting. Then after 2 weeks, I'm like, gosh, I'm at dinner with my kid. And like, this chicken tender looks so great, and it's like, I've been doing it for 2 weeks. Like, I'm going to waste food. This chicken tender, I polish off the chicken tender. We tend to let our habits go. We tend to get comfortable and complacent. That's what happens with a lot of people in prison. They do great when they start, then they let their guard down and they get into trouble. And that's kind of what happens with iPhones. Worse, some guards don't care about the iPhone. They just don't care. They're kind of indifferent to their own life and yours. So you're like, this guard is cool with it. But what happens is the guards shift. They go to another prison, or another guard may actually care. So you begin to let your guard down, you get caught. And iPhones are the biggest problem. One of the biggest problems right now within the Bureau of Prisons. You get arrested, it can be a new charge, you go to the hole. I filmed a TikTok video about a daughter who called to tell me her mom got caught with an iPhone. She just wanted to FaceTime one time, right? People sell it, and it's very easy to get caught. You may not actually get caught with the iPhone, but what happens is they get the phone, they do a cross-check amongst every approved number of every prisoner. So they see who's called, they do a cross-check, and then they call you in. Oh, we noticed on May 5th, you called this number from this iPhone. Why? And that's when the prisoner has a real dilemma. Do you acknowledge it, which they already know? But the next question tends to be, what's the first question the FBI will ask you if you ever get indicted or if you ever show up at your own? Is there anything you'd like to tell us? So they then ask that person, they would ask Elizabeth, who gave you the cell phone? It can help you. Does that interest you? And then you have a whole slew of problems. So when someone says everyone has an iPhone, Mr. Big Wheel, appreciate your comments. I disagree. Not everyone has it. Not everyone has an iPhone. Okay, someone said my brother's been there for 3 years and he's only seen one fight. Yeah, it's a minimum security camp. Like if you act like a fool in a minimum security camp, you may get into a fight. Same thing at a Dunkin' Donuts, okay? People commented, I'm sure she moved money to her parents ahead of time. No, the feds ain't dumb, okay? They go back many, many years. They can subpoena bank accounts and whatnot. There's no moving of money. And the last thing she wants to do is get her parents indicted. Many of you think the dad should have been indicted for the Enron conduct. I can assure you the goal, if you get into trouble, is to not make matters worse for everyone around you. There's no moving of money. That much I can tell you. Yes, she owes $430 million in restitution, million in book sales. Is that everything? Wow, a lot of comments here. I'm grateful. It's either shank or be shanked. Thank you. Thank you for that very valuable contribution. Very, very grateful here. He married her despite charges. Maybe he's in love with her. Maybe he loves her. Maybe people get married in prison all the time. My business partner, Michael Santos, got married with 11 years left on his prison term. He's still happily married till this day. Maybe they just love each other. They wanted to have kids because it would have been difficult when she came home, and they're going to get through this. But I know some of y'all get angry with me when I say that. Okay. I think we've covered, naturally, I wanted this to be a 30-minute live thing, and I'm still talking. As a recovering addict, I know what it is to think like a sociopath. Maybe she's lost the whole world, but I hope she can regain her soul. I do too. Sonny Belwani, did he lose his millions? Yeah, his money be gone too. I have so much respect for you and what you do. I appreciate that. I'm really grateful for you saying that. She is a low risk camp and has a rich husband. Will her kids get visitation? Yes, I cover that. They're going to be visiting. If she were capable of accepting responsibility, she would have done so already. That's not true. I've been to prison. It's part of why I wanted to film this video. This is how I'll close. It's not true. I've been to prison, served time with guys who went to trial, and we'd walk around the track and they'd say, I'm a fool. I'm stupid. I spent all my money on lawyers I thought I could win. I didn't invest the time to understand how and why I got here. I convinced myself that because I didn't have bad intentions, I shouldn't go to prison. I let people tell me what I wanted to hear. I had sycophants and enablers around me, like Holmes has sycophants with the lawyers who I'm sure are still placating her, telling her, don't worry, you won't be there that long. You're going to prevail on an appeal at any time now. And then people get there and the reality sits in. Or, as I addressed earlier, they introspect, they examine, they go to the library, they learn from dead philosophers. They invest the time to understand how and why we got here. They're willing to do the work on days they would rather do just about anything else, work and learn and self-examine. So when someone says it's impossible, if she were going to do it, she would have done so already, I'm a living example of that's not being the case. I said I was sorry only because I got caught. I told the judge I'm ashamed only because I wanted a shorter federal prison sentence. I didn't care about the means. I only cared about the end. What did I, Justin Matthew Paperny, have to say to get the shortest federal prison sentence? And look where that got me. My dumbass was in federal prison. Where did that get me? Away from my family. Where did that get me? Further away from things that I deemed were important to me. I didn't get it till I went to prison. And I pled guilty only because I got caught. And so many people do. It can hit you at a different time. It's coming. My partner served 26 years in federal prison for a nonviolent drug crime. He went to trial, and while he was in the county jail, he wrote a letter to a reporter and said, I did it here, so I'm going to change my life. And at 26 years, he served 26 years, and now you know what he does? He travels to federal prisons all across the country, Leavenworth, Atwater, Terre Haute, Milan. They invest in and use our programs. The BOP does. He's training thousands of people. He went to prison unrepentant. So no, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. And people say it. It's easy to get on the bandwagon. I don't believe it, without question. Someone mentioned about the camp. Some people do find the camp so boring. The highest value in many of these minimum security camps is boredom, which is a big part of the reason as she looks for work. This is a different, someone comment, this is a different dynamic with a job. You can get a job that's an hour a day, but here's the consequence of that. If you don't have a proactive routine where you're rebuilding and growing, you will go bored. You'll get so bored, you'll be insane because there's only so much exercising and eating and working you can do. That's why people watch TV all day. So it's essential that if she finds a job that's a minimum amount of time, she's productive the rest of the day. Unlike so many prisoners who will purposely work for 10 hours a day, 9 hours a day, many of whom don't even need the money. I mean, you can make $150 a month in some prisons doing Unicor, which is like government contractor work. They'll do it not because they need the money, because it doesn't make them feel like they're in prison. The consequence of that is you go home and you're like, you're not ready because you've spent 9 hours a day working to feel busy, but you haven't developed new skills that help you overcome your felony conviction. The hardest part of this experience doesn't tend to be federal prison. And again, someone commented earlier about her life and it's devastated forever. And I'm like, you have a YouTube channel. People are watching, they're believing you, they're commenting, but that's not right. I've been to prison and our community has. The hardest part, it doesn't have to become a lifelong sanction. Don't presume or engage in the ad hominem. If you're a criminal, you must always be bad. No, it doesn't have to be, but it all will hinge on what she does in prison. Every moment, every day. And again, it is kind of a hopeless environment. So the reality is she's going to have to do it on days she doesn't want to. But isn't that what all of you do anyway? How many of you don't want to go to work? You do it. How many of you don't want to exercise? But the days you find a way to exercise, those are the days that really matter. Anyone can do it when you feel great. That's easy. It's the day where you feel terrible and still do it is where you get your real gains. That's what she'll have to do when she's depressed. She misses her babies. Email is down. What is she going to do? Watch TV and complain, or will she go to the library and work on the days that you don't want to. That's where the magic is made, right? It's like everyone obsesses when you start a marathon, everyone celebrates and everyone celebrates the end. You know when the real work is? The grueling, the humiliation, the embarrassment, the toughness, the misery in between. She has her first day in federal prison. It'll be good to get it behind her. She'll have the day that she's released, a day to celebrate. The real work and what will set up the rest of her life is what she does in between. How much I can tell you. Okay. That's a wrap. First name, I think that's all. I think that's all we have here. When do you think she realistically gets out? I said that. I think she's out in 6.5 or 7 years, unless she gets a pardon or commutation. Or again, unless she's pregnant and they release her because of her pregnancy on a compassionate release. You guys are all awesome. I'm grateful you've stayed with me for an hour and 15 minutes. And she's going in. If I hear anything, if I learn anything, I'll report back in the future. Very grateful that you're part of our community. I really am. Have a wonderful day. Back soon. Goodbye.